this is, that negative thought you've been having, and I just can't let you try and change yourself without a fight. So, go ahead and just turn this show off, okay? And, yeah, everything's still fine.
This is Blindsight with your host, Bill Lundgren, an AINC original podcast.
You serious?
We're not holding back truth. We're here to help you heal and become the best you possible. Here's the chair. Here's the pillow. Here's Bill.
Welcome to Blindsight. This is a podcast on mental health and mental wellness. And for those of you who are NFL fans, it's not Blindside, it's Blindsight. Some people mix the two, gotten the two programs.
Good movie.
Up. Yeah.
Good movie.
And this is your host, Bill Lundgren. The program is produced by the Audio Information Network of Colorado. And for part two of this discussion of loneliness, our producer, Jonathan Price, is joining us to continue what was, I hope, last week was a lively discussion on the Surgeon General's report on loneliness and the detrimental effects of loneliness on our physical as well as mental health. Jonathan just indicated to me that he is putting the full report on as a link from our website so that you can look it up, and it makes interesting reading, believe me. But we'll be talking about it. And welcome, Jonathan. I'm glad to have your assistance in talking about this important program.
Yeah, it's awesome to be back on here.
Yeah. And one of the things that I guess I'm reminded, just they talk a lot about volunteerism in the report as a necessary component for getting us out of the loneliness. And I think about my involvement in this organization, which uses a lot of volunteers. And, and I know that it's certainly coming through the pandemic, so many of us were kind of trapped, and to find myself working with Audio Information Network and the wonderful people there has certainly been a help for me personally, emotionally, as it could be for any one of us. But what struck me particularly in the report, the writers, plural, talked about the core values of each of us, which is love, respect, kindness, service, and concern for others. But I would add to that core value, not only concern for others, but for ourselves. Because if we're not giving ourselves that love and kindness, we don't have it to give to other people. So I want to keep that in mind in terms of, when we're looking to how we can make ourselves emotionally healthy. And one of the things that Jonathan pointed out from the report is that they talked about loneliness as being the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day in terms of physical damage, whether it's dementia, whether it's stroke, whether it's any one of the things that would surprise you, that being lonely. Now, this is lonely rather than being alone, but being lonely is, how harmful it is to us. And in looking at some of the research, they found that increasingly, even before the pandemic, more and more people were reporting feeling lonely significant periods of time. And of course, the pandemic just exacerbated all of that. And that, I think that's one of the reasons the report has come out, because we're suddenly saying, oh, here's something that became particularly acute during the pandemic, but it's been there, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, when we were talking about all the loneliness, and it hit me really hard to realize how many people could be in a crowded room and still be alone. Not only the idea of being alone, but also the fact that sometimes people just feel unseen or they feel invisible, and that's a struggle for a lot of people. And right. I want to. There was something that was. I love this graphic. It's on page 11. If you guys are able to get the download of the report, but it talks about these 3 different areas of loneliness, and the first one is structure, and it says the number and variety of a relationship and their frequency of interaction. So how many people are in your household? How many are in your friends? How the marital or partnership status? And then the second one is the function, and that's the degree to which relationships serve the various needs that you may have. So like emotional support, the mentorship support in crisis. And then the final one being the quality, the positive, negative aspects of relationships with interactions. And so examples like this are relationship satisfaction, relationship strain, social inclusion or exclusion. All of these things are critical in lining up our idea of loneliness. So as we go through this particular show, we're going to unveil this, and we're going to add in the quality of blind and low vision support. And so where I'd like to start, Bill, with a question is, I want to take it 2 different ways, or two ways. One, somebody who has been blind a majority of their life, they have adapted well to it. They are living with it. And then 2 is the person who has suffered a traumatic event where they have suddenly lost their vision. How do each of those cope? I'm assuming that each of those would cope with loneliness in a different aspect when we're talking about blindness specifically.
I'm glad you're asking the question, because I think that's an important distinction. Especially on how we respond to the changes that have occurred. For a lot of people, particularly, let's say, someone who has macular degeneration later in life, they find themselves not doing as much. They may find themselves withdrawing. Someone who's had a traumatic experience of blindness. It's a whole new world, and it can be a very frightening world. This can be a very frightening world. And so consequently, and also there's pride that may get involved. And we, as a society, we forget that we're a social animal. We think that we're supposed to be individualists, and we're supposed to take care of ourselves. And when we have something like blindness come over us very suddenly, then our whole pattern of interacting becomes different. And that is frightening. That can lead to depression, anxiety, all of those things we have to deal with. We also have the tendency maybe to fake it, to pretend we really don't need any help. And that's exactly the time where we do need to draw on the resources of others to help build our own resources. And so loneliness exacerbates the effect of that, the change that's occurred. And it also means a change in the feeling of dependence on other people. But what we have to learn is that interdependency is what we want to achieve. In other words, there are things that I may need, but I can't forget that I can give to others still as a blind person. And that's what the person who always dealt with blindness, or someone who's early in life became blind, in their growth process, they begin to get out of this mindset, we hope, of saying, I've got to be self-sufficient individualist, and I've got to ride off in the sunset and pretend it's nothing doesn't bother me. And that's where the differences are. But there's still the component of need is to understand, and this is one of the things that recently being in a class reunion, when I was in high school, I was fully sighted, or thought I was anyway. And now I'm attending a reunion as a blind person with a guide dog. And the fact that people are admiring me, they feel like I'm an example to people, not an example of blindness, but an example of someone who goes ahead and does what he wants to do, like, go to a reunion in another city, but also to be able, what I really had reinforced over and over again was, I've got to ask for help, and it's okay. People feel good being able to help me. And they're not going to take over my life. They're just saying, okay, you need a ride to this and the other thing. I wonder why you can't drive. Well,
right.
And I say that facetiously because we know why, but we need to have somebody to drive it, and that's okay. They're happy to have our companionship in the car. We somehow feel like when we ask somebody to do something for us, we're taking from them, and we're not.
Well, in a few years, you're going to be able to drive the car by yourself because the car is going to just drive itself. Right. And eventually you're going to freak a lot of people out.
Yeah, because I think that it gives me the courage, if you will, to call up and say, hey, I want to take a hike. Will you go with me? Mm-hmm. And they say, I never thought of doing a hike. Yeah, let's go. And then two people are doing it together and sharing the experience. That is a break in loneliness, and that is helping both of you to get your butts out the door and to do something that we might not think of doing. And it's by you mentioned asking and by getting people to think differently and do things for us, it's really doing for both. And that's what we're talking about, breaking the loneliness. And that takes some courage.
One of the things I wanted to hit briefly on, you're talking about people getting up and off the couch and wanting to go out and be and do something else. There's a critical aspect of this, and I want people to really listen and pay attention to this, because if you don't ask this, you're never going to do anything. Yeah. There are a series of questions that you absolutely have to ask yourself in order to start getting out of this loneliness cycle. And that is the who, what, when, where, and why, and even why not. Mm-hmm. And why not? If you're not asking those questions, you are going to stay on the couch. You're not going to do anything your whole life, and you're going to end up causing more loneliness than is absolutely necessary. Go find something you love to do. Find somebody who likes to do it. Join a group, join a Facebook group, join a church organization. It doesn't matter. But I'm telling you guys that there's this graphic up here that I'm looking at, and it makes me so sad. We mentioned it at the top of the show, smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. It's the lack of social connection and loneliness is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's like drinking 6 alcoholic drinks a day. It's physical inactivity. It causes obesity. And
but you see, there's another piece to it. That I have to put a little thing in there. What becomes very frightening for people who are new to trying to get out is the idea that, okay, I'm going to go to a social gathering of 200 friends, and I'm going to be there for 3 hours, and I can't get out. If that is intimidating, and frankly, I find that kind of thing intimidating, even after all this experience. But we say, okay, let me try it for X period, a shorter period of time, and know that I can get home. In other words, don't overwhelm yourself. If this is something that's that blocks you, but take it in small doses so you get used to it and you find ways to accommodate you. But say, as they say, as I've said many times in this program, you can eat a whole elephant, but you do it one bite at a time. And you go out for a little bit, try, put your foot in the water, so to speak, and see how it is for you. And then you can gradually increase it. The other thing, of course, being if you have somebody you trust to say, okay, I want to do this, will you do it with me? That's okay. A person would be very happy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is absolutely correct. The one thing that I noticed in the report, they were talking about loneliness causing depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. Yes, it does, but also depression and a symptom of depression or a symptom of excessive anxiety is loneliness, because you don't have the energy in depression to go out and do something, or you have social anxiety where you're afraid.
Yes.
But both of those are treated.
Or even like sensory deprivation or sensory overload.
Yeah, exactly. So that, if that is debilitating for you, then, going and getting some help from a counselor or someone that cares very much about you and can be objective, then that can help you overcome that. And the more that you do things, the less these symptoms will appear.
We're also not saying if you're a homebody and you're feeling lonely, to go to a football game and surround yourself with 70,000 people.
Yeah.
We're talking about one person. Find somebody that you trust to help you in this. You can you just invite them into your space and say, hey, come play cards with me. Come play backgammon, or let's watch a movie. Or just have a cup of coffee with me. Bill, where in society did we lose this idea of having a communal aspect? You know what? I know where it came from. We got rid of the front porch.
Yeah. Well,
we got rid of the front porch. Back in the day.
Yeah. It's right.
Yeah, but we used to sit on the front porch.
Yeah.
No, we used to sit on the front porch and say, hey, Bob, hey, Bill, and hey, Susan, hey, Patty, and we knew everybody. Yeah, we moved our interactions from the street in front of the house to behind our house, and now we're all private.
Right.
And so we've created this, by happenstance, I guess, we've created this loneliness barrier. And where did the coffee dates go? Where did the tea dates go? Where did just getting together and just wanting to say, hey, I want to get together and talk. That's it. You don't even have to do an activity. Talking is free. If you're strapped on money, go talk.
But you see, that was one of the things that we noticed, particularly during the pandemic. It really accentuated that separation. We were hunkering in our house for fear of getting COVID for good reason, but at the same time, we're having trouble getting out of it. One, it's kind of comfortable. Not, loneliness is can be a little devious, because there is a certain comfort zone that we have in being, and this is being alone, which also in excessive amounts can be the loneliness. But we get caught up in this in avoiding people, when really we're social animals. We need to be out with people. The number of people is individual. What feels comfortable for you. That's what the Harvard study on happiness says. Social interaction, but they were very clear. This is an 81-year study, 3 generations. The key thing to happiness is social interaction, but it doesn't relationships, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to know a whole stadium group of people. It means whatever works for you, and number works for you. And so it's getting out. But there's another another piece of that, and this is particularly for parents, but also it can be significant others, friends. When you know someone who's retreating more, becoming more lonely, spending less time doing things with other people, then it is a caring act that you can do to that person is to let them know you're observing that and you have some concern. And this is particularly for the people who's increasing vision loss, may be encouraging them or making them afraid to go out and do things. And your kindness to them may be to just say, hey, is there something I can do? Or there's some way that, I'm observing this. You're not as active as you used to be. Is something going on? And just as supportive and listen to what they tell you. That's how we break the loneliness for others. It's interesting. Some of the suggestions the report has, we're talking about the workplace and how the workplace needs to be more inviting for people to get coworkers to get to know one another. And this is really the opposite of what it seems to be happening right now. There seems to be, focus on turning out stuff and, so forth and so on, going contrary to that. And also the hybrid they're doing now, we're losing some of that. So that means we have to be extra conscious of being able to reach out to other people, pay attention, and even with your children, if you see a change in behavior, it's time to talk about it with kids, and also let kids know where you are in feeling lonely or feeling, wanting to reach out to other people rather than hiding it. So kids know that they can talk about it. They can talk about how they feel. And they don't have to put up a front. And consequently, it's that kind of love, kindness, respect, concern for others, service to others is what we're talking about here.
I want to add on there the use of body language. A lot of times we don't realize what we're putting off by how we hold our body, by how we hold our hands, by how we hold our legs and our shoulders. Are we, slouched forward? Are we sitting up straight? And I don't know, everybody hears that, and then all of a sudden they just start perking up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm sitting up straight," and they realize, "Nope, I'm slouching," and it's just a funny psychological thing. But
I think if we can see the body language, one of the things I've had other therapists say to me, well, I don't know how you're a therapist because you can't see the body language of your client.
Right.
Well, what I have to tell them, no, but I pay a lot of attention to the language, to the way
and the tone
speak.
of voice.
When people are down, their language changes. When they're feeling excited, you hear excitement. You pay attention to that. And again, if you are with someone and the way they're talking is just a little bit down, pay attention to that.
Surface level conversations.
Right. And
if they can't go any deeper than what they had for breakfast or the weather outside, you may have a problem.
Or they've changed. In other words, they used to be very, excited about things, and you listen to them, and that excitement is gone. Something's going on, and people loathe to share that. But that part of your job is to give them, not to pull it out of them, but to give them a vehicle, a way, a place where they can feel safe to tell you what's going on. Like, I feel lonely and I don't know what to do about it. And that's a big plus for people to be able just to put word to what they're feeling. Major piece.
Yeah, I enjoy This morning we did, Alex and I are one of our producers, our head producer. We did this exercise today with our volunteers where we had a phrase that we used, and we did the full, different biases in our language, in our speech, and how it comes across when we use different inflection. And we did a far right bias, we did a medium right bias, we did a neutral, and then a medium left, and then a way far left. And so it was interesting to me just how much tone of voice matters in our bias. And even though I was the one doing the recording, it was, it took me a little bit to wrap my head around some of the political, like way far left or way far right. And when you're not careful with your tone of voice, you end up telling people a whole lot more than you ever intended to, just by the way you shape your tones, you shape your words, and even accents on particular words, or overemphasizing other words. And you change the entire meaning of what you're going to say. I love the psychology of language and the psychology of communication, because when you're communicating something, it's critical to make that whatever you're communicating, whether it be good or bad or indifferent, to that person, make sure that they understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
Like I could say, I'm excited about talking about loneliness. It's just wonderful. And are my words and my inflections.
I'm so excited.
That's right.
I promise, Bill, I'm excited to be talking about this. This is the best thing ever. Yeah. And it's funny.
We need to pay attention to our inflection. Is it really reflecting what we're feeling, or are we hiding something? Are we trying not to let people know that we're feeling kind of closed up? And I got into a phone call today from one of the insurance companies wanting information. And quite frankly, I was hostile because I didn't need it right at that point. And I had to stop myself and say, I'm coming across rather, almost I could be considered abusive. And I apologized. I said, I got 50 million things going on, and I'm sure you need that. She said, I'm used to it. I said, you go to work in a flak jacket. Basically.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I had to pay attention to my language just as I have to pay attention to other people's language and tone and so forth in order to be welcoming them into a conversation with me. She was laughing, and she, we had a connection. And that's one of the other things I wanted to bring up, which was in the report, that, communication and connection is not just with our family and friends, but it's when we go to the grocery store, how we, talk to the people, how I remember as a kid, the librarian, her name was Miss Boney, which was a wonderful name, but she would ask how we were doing. It isn't just, you want a book. It was how we were doing, what were we learning, and she tailored some of her selection for us based on the conversation. She didn't have to do that, but that's how a community can help one another, and that's our job. That's what we need to do. Our animals hear our tone far more than our words. They don't know what our words mean, but boy, they know what we're saying by our tone. And we can do the same thing to pay attention.
So what do you think is a cause of loneliness, particularly in those who have suffered an immediate trauma to their vision? Where does that happen? Because usually maybe they haven't had a lonely life in the past, but all of a sudden, is it embarrassment? Is it
it can be
struggle
shame
to figure out shame? Yeah, absolutely. What is it?
It could also be fear, because when you've been relying on, as you say, body language, and you've been relying on being able to get from point A to point B without help. When you've been independent, this is a new thing. And for some people, the feeling, and not only of shame, but a helplessness. And we feel very unsafe when we feel helpless.
Yeah.
And particularly when we don't know whether the person we're with is going to be friend or foe, and take advantage of our helplessness. So what we want to do is protect ourselves. Just as an animal gets hurt and retreats in a cave or some place where they can be away from everybody, even though they may, that may be worse for them, and then we try to help them, they bite.
Yep.
And because they're frightened.
Yeah.
I think fright more than anything else. And so the only answer to being frightened about something is to run away from it, fight or flight.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when we've lost our sight, a key way of operating, fight or flight. And so it becomes very difficult. And we have to rebuild our self-esteem. And that's one of the things that treatment centers allows us to be with other people who are blind and are in different stages of acceptance of their blindness.
Right.
Or blindness support group or low vision group or whatever helps us to know that the world hasn't come to an end because we can't see. If we just, that cliche, we can do anything we want to do. We just need to find out how to do it differently. Makes a whole lot of sense. But boy, the process is tough.
Well, it's a fear of the unknown. I mean, when you know something, you're a little bit less afraid of it.
Right. And
I feel
when you have
though
a society that's built on visuals, and even our language, I'll see you next time. We use the sight words all the time. And then when you find yourself, I'm not, that word has an extra meaning.
It does. Yeah. And a little bit more weight to it.
Right. Some people apologize. I didn't mean, when I said, I'll see you next time, I didn't mean to use that word. I said, I'm okay with that word. But when you're new, it almost stands out. Why did he say that? Why did she say that? We begin to see things beneath the words that are being used. And just the idea, and I know this is a male thing, but women are as guilty of it, is to ask for help. Somehow puts us one down.
Yeah.
And I'm finding more and more, no, it doesn't. It makes me an equal because I know that I can help that person at some time.
Absolutely.
And we have to get out of that mindset. But it's difficult. And sometimes we have to do that by being with other people who've dealt with it, or at least to try out new things that we haven't tried before. That is like asking for help.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot of this loneliness topic, and we have, it feels like we've just barely scratched the surface.
Absolutely.
We're 2 episodes
in. We could do a whole year.
We could do a whole podcast on loneliness in and of itself. And, I'm sure that there are podcasts out there who do loneliness. But Bill, in reading this report, share with us some hope. Share with us some points that we can look to and say, hey, we can get better. We can make the society something that we want it to be.
Yeah, I think the report is important from the standpoint of saying, here are some ways that we can work at getting better as a society. We talked about individual sectors from parent and child up to institution and said, look, we need to look at this. I'll call it disease, but I'm not using the word disease right, but I call it the disease of loneliness. We have answers, but it means that we need to change some ways that we think and work and interact in order to promote the idea of love, kindness, respect, service, and concern for others as well as ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Great discussion. I hope that you all have enjoyed it. This is Blindsight. Host Bill Lundgren with his guests and producer Jonathan Bryce. We're happy to have had you with us today. If you have any comments, anything that you'd like to add to it, shoot us an email and look for the link to the report. I think you'll find it interesting reading. So until next time, take care and be a friend to somebody that you don't know yet.